Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fall 2017 Career Week. We're very excited to get started today. So this morning, if you don't know, you are in the work and careers in the nonprofit sector session. We have Brian here from the YMCA to talk to you guys. And Brian, we thank you generously for sharing your time and insights with our students on this lovely Monday morning. A few housekeeping things for the students. I see a couple of learning passports out there. So just as with every other learning passport session you attend, you must stay for the entirety of the session. If you have to leave for whichever reason, that is up to you, but we do ask that you stay the whole entire time. If you are claiming this on your learning passport, we ask that you complete the survey that you received when you walked in this morning. When you give us the survey, we will stamp your passport. And I know I don't need to say this to you guys, but we ask that you please remain quiet when Brian here is talking and when someone else is answering a question. You will have the opportunity to ask your own questions at the end of Brian's talk, so hold on to those, and he would be happy to answer anything you got. So without further ado, we will go into session one.
Thanks, Cassie. As Cassie said, my name is Brian Posevad. I'm the president and CEO at the YMCA of Greater Halifax, Dartmouth. There are 48 YMCAs throughout Canada. We're in 123, it evolves, countries in the world. And for those of you that know, YMCA was started as the Young Men's Christian Association a long time ago. I'm not going to give you the whole history, but it started out for men, for Christians, and for young, because they were moving from rural to industrial capitals, and we're trying to find a way to have something a little more productive to do, a way to develop. And the only thing that we still are from that day in Canada is an association. We welcome all. And I'm going to walk you through a little slideshow, and I promise no death by PowerPoint here, as long as I can get that to go. And slideshow view. Now, I might have to go back to school to make sure I'm doing it right. View, start slideshow. Anybody? Yep. From beginning. Thank you. Okay, that's it from the end, so we're going to go here. Again, it's, does anybody here recognize that picture? That is from our residential camp called YMCA Big Cove. It's just out near New Glasgow, and it is the oldest residential camp in Canada. Residential camping is a critical part of what the Y delivers, and it's about, again, development. Okay. That's me at camp. You can't pick me out, I hope, because it's a nice blurry picture and it was a long time ago. I started with the Y as a child. I took swim lessons. How many people here have been to a Y? A couple? Okay. How many haven't been to a Y? We've got some work to do. So at this camp was called YMCA Wanakita. I had the opportunity to not be with my parents. I had the opportunity to learn to swim, camp, canoe, do all sorts of great activities. But what really I didn't know as a young man was that I was actually learning to live in a community. I was learning to, there's only 7 pieces of bacon and 7 kids, and who's going to get that piece, and how do you share, and how do you take turns, and how do you do it without your parents helping you do it? This is my family. They've all been involved in the Y in some way, shape, or form, fundraising, developing. Again, they have utilized the services. I've been lucky to live in a number of communities, and I've always been involved with the Y. And this is a not-for-profit sort of career conversation, but what I wanted to do is give you a little bit of, you got to be passionate in whatever you do. That's critical, because if you're not passionate in what you do, it's not going to be worth doing. The not-for-profit industry is, I hope, a place where you can find passion. This is me playing football with a bunch of guys from the YMCA a long time ago that we actually played together for 25 years at McMaster University. This was a year we got our little shirts and we all retired because we were old and we were getting crushed every day. But that was the end of that. This facility here is one that I built in Hamilton, and it is what we call Center of Community. We're currently in the midst of doing that. I don't know if you know, but there's the corner of Sackville and South Park. Had a big hole. You can see it's starting to come out of the ground right now. That's going to house a state-of-the-art YMCA that does all sorts of different things. Most people think of us now as gym and swim. 150 years ago, most people thought of us as scripture reading and a chance to be connected. We've got all sorts of different stages, and we do all sorts of different things. Right now, we really do live in a world where we've been more connected than ever before. Yet, how disconnected are people from what they do? I think with the recent events in the world, it's time. We need more empathy. We need more mutual understanding, and we really do need a sense of community, whatever that community is. Who's going to do that? Where is it going to happen? Well, one of the things about a YMCA is we know that connected people are healthier people. At the end of the day, social inclusion is a determinant of health now. If you're not connected to your community, you're not going to live as long. You're not going to be as happy. You're not going to have the benefits of the wonderful community we have. At the Y, we help immigrants and newcomers participate and engage in their communities. We have roughly 20 settlement workers working in over 34 schools in the Halifax region delivering settlement work, including children into school. The most basic element of being welcomed and included is a YMCA employee working with the school board. We have a settlement center on Bears Road where thousands of people come through and get connected with English learning circles, sewing groups, you name it. Like the stuff that goes on there, there's a community kitchen. The way that people are linked in is critical. And you would all probably have heard of ISANS. Did you know the YMCA is the largest youth settlement worker in Canada? We're not always bragging, or maybe we don't communicate it well enough, but this is a critical part of what the YMCA does. We have 8 employment centers in HRM where you could become a career practitioner, career counselor. We help people get employed, and those that are underemployed as well. So that we do it in Gottingen and Dartmouth, all around. You might know that we're pretty good at working with youth. We have from licensed childcare to we have recreational programs. When the new building comes in, you'll see all of that stuff going on. At our Gottingen Street location, we have some of the best basketball going on, and there's all sorts of different youth programming back to the camps and day camps and after-school programs as well. One of the things that's pretty critical to me and my YMCA is just everyone gets that opportunity. Everyone says, well, Good Life's your competition, or the city recreation's your competition. No, we're all doing the same thing. We want you healthy. We want you active. Where do you feel welcome? You know, where does someone who is feeling overweight or lack of self-confidence, or I don't want to put spandex on to work out, I want to be comfortable in what I do, I want to swim, I want to play, where do you go? And unfortunately, most of us don't always feel welcomed in all the places that are there. So our job is to try and make sure that you are welcome and you find the thing that is most important to you. You're a runner, run. You like your yoga studio, go to your yoga. Be active, be healthy, because again, that's going to be a critical part for you. And we do all sorts of stuff. We have a program called AIM, where it's Abilities in Motion, and it's in partnership with the hospital. So those that haven't had the opportunity or can't, via wheelchair and other situations and other mobility challenges, are worked with through us. And you don't, I mean, who here wants to work out in a hospital? Good. Don't. If you don't have to, don't do it. But where can you go? Where will the right expertise and commitment happen? One of the things our new facility is going to do is we're going to combine the hospital, we're going to build a level of community health. We're going to talk about getting out of the hospital. We'll have a therapeutic pool. We'll have equipment that meets a lot of the requirements around mobility challenged. And we're going to have hospital staff help us on our floor. So there's a connection, there's a level of transference. So just think of how unsafe you feel coming into that environment. You get that one friendly face, you get that one connector, that one person that helps you go. How many people here work out in some way, shape, or form? Easier to do it by yourself or with somebody else? Okay. Told you about my camp experience. We had 900 children, young adults, come through our big Cove Camp this year. And for those of you, it is the oldest residential camp in Canada. It also looks like the oldest residential camp in Canada. So it's a bit of a badge of honor for these participants that go through. And it's I couldn't even tell you what the camp looked like when I went, but I can still tell you about the 6 or 7 folks that were in my cabin. I remember the group. I remember the things we did. I remember the challenges we took. And it's a fantastic element or career in a YMCA where you actually get to work outdoors. You're teaching children all sorts of values. We do outdoor education. We have some camps are all year centers. Some are more seasonal staff. But it's a fantastic opportunity to do something that makes a difference. Told you a little bit about this new building. That's what it's going to look like when it's done. We're part of a mixed-use complex. There'll be retail space, there'll be condominiums and rental apartments. 2 towers, we're kind of the podium of the tower. We'll have a 70,000 square foot facility with a big gym, we'll have health and wellness centers, we'll have three aquatic tanks, so a therapeutic, a lane pool, and a hot tub. We'll be putting through 2,000 youth through swim lessons every year. We will have 6,000 to 7,000 members. We'll have about 1 million accesses in this facility. And one of the things that's going to be so different from what you may have experienced before, or what we're really proud of, is we've included a family development center here. So not only can you be a member, which we would all love you to join, I'll give you all the passes later, but we also want to welcome community groups and different ways of entering a Y that you didn't feel comfortable in entering before. So sort of call it our second front door. You know our traditional stuff, this will be a way that we can work with ISANS, Big Brothers, IWK, doesn't matter, but they can come through so you don't have to sign up and go through all that process, and we're going to get you starting to feel welcomed and start you on that health journey. From the why, what makes us really what makes us different is we have the history and the depth and the reach in a community. We'll have, in a community of 400,000, we're touching 1 in 4 people in some way, shape, or form. Through the schools, through our employment, through our immigration, through our programming, through our camps. So we're actually out there. We're in 49 sites throughout HRM. We're in 7 communities throughout Nova Scotia, and again, we are coast to coast as a national organization. A piece that floats my boat and why I stay here is the Y is open to everyone, regardless of fiscal ability, regardless of your ability to participate. It is there, and it's our job to reach out and connect with you. We're not always successful, and we're constantly learning and constantly changing, but it's our mandate and it's our obligation to make people feel welcomed and included. Because at the end of the day, we're about developing and health, and we know inclusion creates that. So I wanted to thank you for your time to come out here today, Monday morning, on a soon-to-be monsoon kind of day. I'm glad you could all come out. And I wanted to share just a little bit about sort of why I'm here. You got a brief glimpse of that through the slideshow, and as I said, I wouldn't do death by PowerPoint to you. But the YMCA it's a movement. It started, it's changed, it's evolved, and it's throughout the world, but it's always done from a grassroots perspective. It's not a mega corporation that said, okay, we're now going to move into Chile and Canada and do these projects. It is started by someone in Bogota, Colombia, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, wherever they are, and they say, we've got a challenge. We've got something to fix. We've been in HIV information work, we've been in orphanages, we have been in health and wellness centers, we have been in working with street kids. It depends on the community. It depends, like, what is the challenge here in Halifax today? If you look at anybody, what do you think the challenge is in Halifax? To you? Jobs. Yeah. You guys are going to get this great education. Where are you going to go? Maybe not Halifax. One of the things we're trying to do is make this a more livable city to keep you, one, because if you're going to be healthier, you're going to probably want to stay here. You want to have some level of employment. That's why we work with the provincial government to have these employment centers and underemployment and get you working. And that's a critical piece for you. We are hugely involved in including people to stay in this community. A vibrant community means healthy, welcomed, included, employed. If you went down the social determinants of health, about 10 out of the 14, the YMCA is trying to address in some way, shape, or form. And we don't do it alone. I think one of the critical pieces for a YMCA is we can't be standalone. No one solves the problem by themselves. And there's got to be some groups that will bridge together and do these things. So if you were looking at the government can't solve it, post-secondary can't solve it, industry is not going to solve it, but you better have everybody lining up. So who is that facilitator? Where is the voice of the community? And I would suggest, if you start to look at there's some fantastic not-for-profit organizations in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and the world that are doing fantastic work. You don't always hear about it. You hear some of the ones that have the TV commercials and other things, but there are grassroots organizations in this community, in the North End, and all around Halifax. There are bigger NGOs like myself that have a little more prominence and are delivering in all sorts of different ways. And then there are those that would do provincial work that are worth looking at. And it takes the great thing, and when I was talking with Scott on how important it is to understand how to manage that, is it is different than working in a for-profit industry. Different motivators. If you had one thing that's going to help you with that job that you're going to want to keep, what's the most important one thing? Anything? I'd suggest you're happy to go there. And that is going to actually, I'm getting older. I've just achieved a birthday milestone recently that I'm not overly proud of. I keep thinking of myself as young. But I wake up in the morning and I know I'm going to do something that's going to make a difference. And I don't always, by the way. Some days I pull my hair out, I'm frustrated. Every job is going to have a good day and a bad day. But my good days tend to be really good because I see people grow. When I don't have to sit in my office or sit in a board meeting as CEO, but when I get to go into the childcare and watch a 2.5-year-old say no to a teacher 55 times and then do it and smile and eat or play or whatever it was, that's pretty uplifting. When I go to our immigrant center, when I got invited to, and they have, the best thing we've learned to hook here is we celebrate with food. There's always some kind of celebration going on. And when I get invited to that celebration and I get to taste something I've never had in my life before, I'm listening to 3 languages that I don't understand, but everybody's trying to communicate, that's a good day. That floats my boat. Or even, I just had the chance recently to meet a young lady who, get this, we helped her find a job 12 years ago. She's now a hairstylist. Good, right? Happy, she likes what she does. She just donated a large sum of money for her, a very significant gift, to make sure that we can pay it forward. That's what she said. I just want to pay it forward. You helped me and my family, she had some young children at the time, change the trajectory of my life. And I want to make sure that you do that again. So here's $1,000, which again, for her was a significant gift. And go out and make sure that that happens. Make sure somebody else gets changed. It's a good day. When you get those sorts of things happening to you, you can smile and say, I'm making a difference. And we'd love to make a difference faster, but at least my team and I always can get up and people come and go, right? The other thing is the YMCA is a development organization. A lot of your not-for-profit roles may not be the most pay. They're normally competitive. The world's changing. Everybody's hiring talent the same way. So whether you're going for-profit, not-for-profit, we all are looking for certain skills and are all compensating accordingly. But when you can, at the end of the day, say, I made a difference, I'm feeling good about what I did, I'd suggest that you're gonna continue and you're gonna feel good about it. And you can take those skills and take them to whatever it is you want to do, whether it's political aspirations, whether it is going to a for-profit industry. The skills are transferable, but you do have to learn them in a way that's going to help you be successful wherever you're going. So I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, and I'm happy to take some questions about either the YMCA or the not-for-profit industry. And I know, Scott, you have some stuff you're going to share too. So, questions? Or was I so good that you have nothing? I like to think it that way.
Brian?
Yep.
Tell us about your story of life. How did you end up where you are today? You're from Ontario, right?
I am from Ontario.
Okay, so how did you end up where you are working for the YMCA today?
Whew. Well, I was a camp counselor who became they hired me full-time in some silly job they made up because I wasn't going back to school, so they kept me employed. I was a youth director, I mopped floors, I was a branch manager, I did some employment work. So I had the neat thing with the Y is I had abundance of opportunities. And one of the opportunities that I ended at is I was a vice president in the Hamilton region. And by the way, at camp I met my wife too, so that was kind of part of this story. I learned to build buildings. I got into construction. And so I finished building 3 facilities in the Hamilton area. And the Halifax job came up, and me being from Ontario, we've always, actually every other summer, we would vacation out here. And so all of you have been to Halifax in August. It's a lovely place. And so we were in PEI in Halifax, and then an opportunity came, and so we applied. And I was lucky enough to become the successful candidate here. And why I mentioned I met my wife at the Y in camp 30 odd years ago. Anyone who knows, a happy wife is a happy life. And I had to get vetted through her because she was a very successful business in Ontario that we had to transpose over here. So for those of you that are talking about employment is a tough thing, it is. Halifax is a tougher environment to crack sometimes. And so she is an HR consultant, has her own business, does very well in Ontario, actually has to fly back most of the time to get some of her work still. But it's taken her a solid 2 years to break into the industry here with her business. So that was how we got here. And seeing the things that are going on, has been remarkable. Halifax is a pretty vibrant community, and I like to say it's just about ready to wake up. It has all the things. You've got a fantastic post-secondary system. The hospital system is a center for Atlantic Canada, and the expertise here is as good as anywhere in the country. You've got the most beautiful environment. I figured, hey, I could be a part of that. I can help. Thanks.
A lot of students today, graduate universities in the Halifax area, want to stay in Halifax. You're part of the revitalization of the downtown area, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What's your prognosis on Halifax in the coming decades to improve? And as far as a place to live, what's happening?
Well, I would suggest one of the first things I would do if I'm picking a community to live in, look at how many cranes are up. And in the downtown core of Halifax, you've got, now, many people aren't happy about it because it slows traffic and does all those things in infrastructure. But Halifax is a growing community. The fact that we, I shouldn't say you, we have applied to be part of the Amazon process should make you feel great. Win, lose, or draw, the city is thinking about redevelopment. Volta, there are pieces of Halifax that are going to come of age, and if not yet. And I would suggest that you'll see employment is a key focus. I'm part of the Halifax Partnership. How do we make this work? Go ahead. I think there are things. I think with our level of government and again, post-secondary and hospital, so there's always some basis of work. With the manufacturing, it has to change. I think it's great that we are thinking in the IT fields and the app development and media and culture. I think those are critical masses. And the infrastructure to support everyone coming here is going to be pretty important too. I also think the world is changing. How many people here think they're going to work for one company the rest of their life? Nobody. How many people think you're going to have, what is it, the average now, 12 jobs? Is that what it is? 12? The number is into double digits from my understanding. So you're going to have so many different opportunities, so many different things to do. And I do believe as well, some of the skills that you'll get in a not-for-profit agency is developing how would you do your own business? How would you? The nice thing is, it's not all specialty. There is a lot of generalism to it. You might have to wear a couple of hats in some different organizations, and I would always suggest take that advantage. Like if someone's going to give you the opportunity to learn on their dime, go learn, because it's going to be something you can take and do. I've done, though it's been with the Y, I've done about 10 different careers within it. And it's always been great where you make sure you get developed and you have those things, and I've gone back to school, and it all depends on what it is that I was doing. But Halifax has that opportunity, and it has some great for-profit, not-for-profit. You've got some solid industry leaders in some things here, from IBMs to you watch Killam. Killam is a great supporter of the YMCA, but they have all sorts of neat jobs in managing apartments and properties across Canada, and they're based out of Halifax. And so there's a lot of, I believe there's a lot of industry that's going to start to pick Halifax because of quality of life. And I'm hoping that fancy new building that I was showing you, I'm hoping that will be part of what draws and keeps people here. Sorry, you had a question. Great question. I worked for Toys R Us. I ran a group home in Toronto. I was a packaging machinery salesperson in those 30 years. I have had the opportunity to change. I have doubted when the Y was doing the right things. I have doubted when the industry has done the right things. You read about a CEO that's taken money, or you've read about it's no different than in other industries. Things will go wrong. Some people do some things that aren't necessarily as ethical as it should be, and you need to be vigilant wherever you go. But I know, as my wife would attest to, I always said, at some point I'm going to have to leave the Y and get a real job. And not realizing, but about halfway through, I went, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want, like I've gone out and did those real jobs, and I went, I'm not that good at selling widgets. Not that good at, the bottom line, and the nice thing with the YMCA is it's an operational charity. We're not really supported by the government or other, we have fundraising, we have fee for service, and we have government fees that are contributed. So if we don't run properly, we close. We don't have someone that bails us out or supports us. And it's a great question. And I think and it would be great to talk to some of our 20-year-olds that are employed with us, because they challenge me on a pretty regular basis. You say this, but is it really true? And so I have to listen. And how do we change and grow and adapt? Because that's the other thing, is when you start to get charities or any organization that's been around for a long, long time, they pretty much think they know what they're doing. And when you get into that complacent mode, that's when it's the end of Sears or the end of whatever, because you just can't be complacent. The world changes too fast now. Good question, thank you. Others?
Brian, how big is your operation financially, and volunteers and employees?
Great. The YMCA here in Halifax is an $8 million operation from a revenue perspective. We have about 180 employees. About 70% of those are full-time. And we have just under 400 or just over 400 volunteers right now, depends on the season. And as we said, we would have approximately 100,000 accesses into our programs every year. So depending on how they go. And in some programs, we want to keep you. So childcare and those things. Some programs, like employment, we want you to go. We want you to fly. The faster we get you to where you need to be, the less you need us. So those are kind of those numbers. In Canada, for an interesting number for you, is the YMCA owns $8 billion worth of assets. Now, it's tough to sell a community center, but that's what we're very grounded. So there's a fair chunk of asset that stabilizes this organization. We have like the Toronto Y. The other nice thing is that we are a network, right? It's a federated unit, and we are a network with the YMCA Canada that helps support us. But in Toronto, that's a $250 million Y. But we'll grow, we'll get there. We may not get to 250, but they do all the same services that we do. And we sort of mirror on some of the things they do. Gives you some size and scope. Yeah, Ken. Good question. We currently have a PR student working for us. We do a co-op there to help us with our capital campaign to build the new building and some of our communication work. We hire a fair number of students through particularly our after-school programs, because it tends to work with your schedules. But it depends, it's always the school that we're in, right? So if we're in St. Catharines or one of the schools, it tends to be where you live close to. We unfortunately, from our employment in some of the other areas, is we have a lot of, not unfortunately, but we have a lot of longer term staff. People do stay with us a fair amount of time. So it's harder, but we will be, for those of you that are gonna graduate in about a year and a half, I'll be hiring 100 people to run the new center. So from health and wellness perspective, accounting, general management, fitness, childcare. So we do hire a number of students. we're not as proactive in the development side of it as I'd like, but we are working on that. So we do hire co-ops and try to integrate. It's almost more reactive. Like Big Cove is our #1 student hirer every summer. I need 120 of you to help me. So it's now, unfortunately, that paying for your university and going to Big Cove tends to not always work as well together. But for those that have that ability, it's a great summer employment. We also, we aren't as far along as we should be, and that's actually one of the things that my colleagues in Nova Scotia were talking about, because we do believe there's a better way to work with, particularly in the community health delivery system. We'd like to see the students delivering on our floors, and how does that work? Good question, though. I think they're like the for-profit sector. There's probably a yes and a no. From me to we. They were my neighbors. I knew the little guys when they were selling lemonade. They've got a huge organization now, and have tapped into, I think, the not-for-profit and volunteerism in particular. It's much more episodic now, where volunteerism 20 years ago, you come to every Tuesday, 5:30, teach a class, do your piece, and that was great. And we would do that for the next 25 years. That doesn't interest people the same way that it did. So the charities and the not-for-profits that have gotten smarter and are looking at episodic volunteering and new ways to connect and include, and that includes co-ops and other pieces, are doing very well. But I would suggest that not-for-profits might be a little behind, solely in the fact that we don't always have, when you're wearing multiple hats, it's a little harder to change your direction as quickly. But there are good ones, and the other nice thing is, in a not-for-profit, particularly the smaller ones, you have that ability to make that change. Like it's when I was in for-profit, there was a system, right? You would have, it's very prescriptive normally on a larger firm, and if you thought outside that wasn't rewarded. Where in a not-for-profit, we would give you something that is prescriptive, but if you thought beyond that, that would be rewarded, because if you could make this go faster, more efficient, more productive, that frees us up to do more to the front line of what we want to get, whatever our mission is. And so it all depends on what you're looking for and how you are, because you can find bad ones in everywhere, and you can find great ones everywhere. Well, I think we have two routes I see getting into not-for-profit management. One is you're going to come out of school and you're going to get that job, and you probably already have been affiliated to that organization in some way. You've volunteered, you've donated, you've done something with them, and you have a belief, a common belief, and you will find that way and you will work with them. And you probably make up your own job to start. But there's also a different route that people are taking into not-for-profits now as well. They join the board or an advisory group. And you know what? As much as I like my law firm, I don't know that I want to work 90 hours every week, and I don't know that this isn't, what I'm doing is making a difference for me. And so I have a chief operating officer job that I'm just put out to the market. I'm looking for someone to really take us into the next stage. And I have 3 board members who have applied to it, because they're looking at it and they say, I don't necessarily, and these are all very qualified people doing excellent things in the for-profit industry, but they see an opportunity to make change. And their values are obviously aligned to get onto our board and to do those things. So there are two paths in, and I think, but it's much like if you hear even in the for-profit, where something ignites me, right? Something connected me, whatever that may be, whatever that alignment, like there's a value alignment that has to happen in what you do, or I would suggest you're doing the wrong thing. That's what I've seen. So I'm going to play one little video, if that's okay. And this is hopefully going to help.
What if there was a place where FaceTime meant making connections? Where Facebook was about getting lost in a story? Where an Instagram was a measure of progress? And friending somebody was a transformational experience? A place where swiping right meant quick feet on the court. Where a Tumblr was an aspiring Olympian. And being LinkedIn was about joining a community. The Y is that place, and we're building for the future. The YMCA of Greater Halifax, Dartmouth. Be part of the original social network.
So that just got released actually last week. We are just going into a community campaign to do the finishing touches of our new building. We've raised $8.5 million and we want to raise $9 million. So we're going out and as you talk about, this was a partnership between for-profit and not-for-profit. Journeyman did our video for us at a reduced rate. So I have to mention them every time I show the video. And we have so many great donors, and we're getting back out to the community now to remind people everything that happens. So does that draw your attention in any way? Good, thanks. Just so you know, it was a former PR student that we work with a company called National PR, and our student was the one who drove this for us. You know, a lot of us old white guys, we don't get it anymore, and we want to make sure that the right message is going, and that we want to be able to connect. We wanted to reach out in a way that you wouldn't, we could have put the traditional picture of the swimming pool with mom and daughter saying, come join and you'll have a great time and grow up. We wanted to make sure that all of the things that we do and sort of that little conversation we had in advance are out there as us as an organization. And we are working hard to become more relevant. So I'm glad at least my student was correct. Thank you. It's good to know. Unless there's other questions, I don't want to get in the way of you getting your passport stamped.
Brian, I'm just going to make a couple comments.
You sure?
Don't mind before we officially thank you?
Sure.
Good morning, folks. My name is Scot McMillan. I teach in the Department of Business and Tourism. I just want to mention a few things. Brian, thank you very much to come in and talk about the YMCA. This university is a great institution. It was founded on social justice, building a better world, a better community for all. And that is what the nonprofit sector is about. There's 3 sectors out there: for-profit, the public sector, government, and the not-for-profit sector. These are 3 very important sectors. What I want to encourage you is to get involved whether it's for volunteering or whether it's part-time work, I think the opportunity to get involved is huge. We have a new program we're starting next year in nonprofit leadership. Beginning September 2018, we have a new major, minor, and concentration that you can do as part of the Bachelor of Business Administration degree. We also have a standalone certificate that is available to train you in nonprofit leadership for any degree here at the Mount. And I'm really excited by that because I think it gives you the opportunity to kind of branch out and expand your credentials here. So you can get a degree in public relations and at the same time get a certificate in nonprofit leadership. And all that means is that you are more marketable depending on what you do. You may not choose to ever work full-time for a nonprofit organization, but I think everyone wants to make a better community, a better world for all. And whether you work part-time or volunteering, whether you help in fund development when you're asked, this is about building a better community, a better world for all that we're co-creating. A couple things about the nonprofit sector. This is the basic definition of a nonprofit. Nonprofit, all that means is that, look, at the end of the day, when you bring in the money, you don't divvy it up between shareholders. But a nonprofit organization can be an extremely large organization, extremely business-like, extremely well-run. And in fact, I would suggest to you that CEOs like Brian Posavad are tremendous CEOs who could be successful in anywhere, but they're choosing to work in the nonprofit sector. His skills and abilities are huge. He works with so many people, dealing with levels of government, raising millions of dollars, coordinating things, trying to build a better community, a better world for all. He could take his skills and bring them into the for-profit sector very easily. The CEO of Montreal, what's his background? He's an engineer? Yeah, he was a vice president of Bell, right? And now he's the chief executive officer of the YMCA of Greater Montreal? Yeah. CEO of St. John, who is she? What's her background?
She used to be a managing partner at Deloitte, Shiloh.
She's a CA, right?
She's a CA.
Yeah. And she worked on the board of directors? Yeah. And then she she got involved in doing some part-time work, I think?
Yeah, they roped her in.
They roped her in. And now she's the CEO.
She's the CEO there now for 12 years.
Yeah. It's fascinating how people are in one sector of work and then they end up in the nonprofit sector. Just because, hey, the work resonates with you. You want to make a difference. You want to make a difference and do work that's worthwhile. And as you say in the YMCA, and I used to work for the YMCA in a previous career, it's work that every day you can see that you're doing something worthwhile. You can see the smiles on the kids' faces, the adults' faces. You know you're bringing people together. You know you're creating an organization that's inclusive where no one is turned away. And nonprofit work, so it can be very, very rewarding. And as Brian mentioned, it's work you get to do something. You get to do something. You can actually see what it's about as opposed to being a cog in a machine that you kind of can't see the results on. So it can be extremely rewarding work. Okay, the nonprofit sector in Canada, it's a thriving sector. It's the second largest in the world, 171,000 organizations, more than 2 million employees, 10.5% of the labor force, over 112 billion in revenue. 50% of Canadians, more than 50% of Canadians volunteer their time, and more than 80% of Canadians donate to the nonprofit sector. So this is a really significant sector, and it's a growing sector in this country. In Nova Scotia, 5,800 organizations, 7% of the workforce, over 2 billion revenue, 36,000 employees. In Atlantic Canada, 83,000 employees. So it's significant. It's significant and it's growing. This is Business Week. The cover from Business Week, I forget the year this was. Peter Drucker, who is a big management guru, very successful person. This year, on the cover, they put the CEO of the Girl Guides of America. And Peter Drucker said she was the best CEO, in his opinion, in America. And she was the CEO of the Girl Guides of a nonprofit organization. And Drucker considered her the best CEO in America at the time. And I want to leave you with a couple of things here. The challenge for all of us is trying to make our decisions and live our lives. And we're trying to live a meaningful life that's happy, a life that we can look back on and where we can actually, and say, hey, I did something with my life. And we want it to make sense to us. Work is a very important part of that life. And I would suggest to you, what you don't want to do, don't work in something that isn't meaningful to you. We spend so much of our time at work. Don't allow yourself to be caught up in work that is just about a paycheck and it's not meaningful to you. Because, when you look back in decades to come on how you spent your life, all of us want to feel, hey, I enjoyed that life. It made sense to me. And I want to feel that I did something that was worthwhile to me. So the challenge as we kind of make those decisions about about our work is to kind of, how does it fit in with that overall life that I want to live? And those of you who had me as a teacher, I give this usually in the first day of class. And it's basically situating ourselves in the greater world. All of us are kind of, hey, we live our lives and it's all about ourselves. I'm the center of my universe, but I'm not the center of anyone else's universe. And I live my life in my head, my thoughts, my emotions. I try to make sense of things, and as I live my life each day. But we're situated in a community. We're part of a community. And we're interdependent in that community as we're trying to be involved in it and make a better community for all. Whether it's for ourselves, whether it's for our children, for our grandchildren, for the generations and generations to come. But most importantly, we're also situated in a greater world. We're part of this globe, 7 billion people plus on this planet, all trying to make sense of our lives. We are interdependent. I think what happens in the other side of the world in poverty or conflict is my business. It is. And I think all of us, we want to be part of co-creating a better world for all. We have a lot of problems. If you look at poverty, you look at racism, inequity, the discrimination, you look at the situation the world lives in, it's not nice, it's not a pretty picture. But we can change this, and we can be involved, whether it's through work or whether it's through volunteering in that community, whether it's through donating money, but we can get involved and we can create a better world for all. And so I suggest you always never forget of how we're part of that community, we're part of that greater world that is interdependent. And I just want to mention one last thing to you. This is Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry. Again, students of mine know I mention Star Trek now and then. Gene Roddenberry, who created the show Star Trek, which became the movie series, etc. Now there's a new show on television, I believe. Gene Roddenberry was an LAPD. He was a cop in Los Angeles. But he liked to write science fiction, and he liked to think about the future of the world. And Gene Roddenberry articulated in the show Star Trek a vision of the world that eventually what would gradually happen is that the world would come together. Borders would come down. We'd realize that countries were just about heritage, but that we were one people. We would deal with the problems of poverty, conflict, inequity, racism, etc. So the world would gradually come together. Money would be a thing of the past. We would get past materialism. We would not be pursuing the almighty dollar, realizing that, hey, that's not what the purpose of life. We would come together, deal with all these problems, and then venture out of this our planet through technology. We'd find out there's life out there and other planets in the universe. And the purpose, according to Roddenberry, that humanity would evolve into is twofold. One, the development of the individual, and this kind of fits in with the YMCA, Brian, body, mind, spirit, kind of be all I can be, if you will. And second purpose that Roddenberry articulated that he saw would be our contribution to the greater universe. And so we have two roles, basically, the development and maximization of who I am as an individual and my greater contribution to society and the universe. I think it's a good vision. I think it's a really good vision. I like Roddenberry, and I haven't heard anything better, frankly, but about getting involved. Now, the new nonprofit program has a series of courses starting in September. Introduction to the nonprofit sector, 2 leadership courses, one directed at managing people, both employees and volunteers. Leadership, strategic leadership and strategic planning and kind of building a better world and better communities. Not-for-profit marketing and not-for-profit financial management. It also has a series of electives with women's studies, sociology courses, political studies courses that are related to the nonprofit sector or related to our communities. I'm excited about the potential of the new program, and I suggest you take a look at it and then take some of the courses. Why not? You know, why not? I think that's all I had. Cassie, you're going to?
So, thank you, Brian, so much for coming in today and chatting with us. It was great. Students, can we give Brian a round of applause for his wonderful presentation? Thank you so much. And then on behalf of all of us here at St. Vincent, here is a little gift. No worries. So, if you like to get your passport stamped, do so orderly. And then I'm sure Brian would not care if you came and asked him any of your burning questions that you might have after that presentation. So we have Paulette up at the top there and Colleen at the bottom here, and they will stamp your passports once you give them your completed survey. We also ask that you fill out your passport in its entirety before you give it to them to stamp.